Hey everybody, this is Dr. Drake 63 here today, and I've got not what's going to be an unboxing, but taking a look at a new to me firearm. This was brand new to somebody in 1975. This is a Colt Trooper MK III, and this is in 357 Magnum. And we're going to shoot this today, as well as take a look at it up close. You'll see when I compare it to my L-frame Smith & Wesson 586, which is brand new, that you know, it's definitely an older gun, but as of currently, it outshoots that Smith & Wesson just in terms of the trigger being broke in. Really super nice, both in terms of single and double action. I am not going to shoot this and dry fire it for you, because my understanding is that is one thing you don't want to do, is break this firing pin. In this case, it's a transfer bar, but you don't want to break this or take a chance of breaking it, because the only way you can fix it is send it back to the factory. These guns have not been made for a long time. Like I said, this one was from 1975. Put this in perspective, in 1975 I was in 4th and 5th grade. The president at that time was Gerald Ford, so pre-Jimmy Carter even, and I was just a little tyke running around in my then hometown of St. Louis, Missouri. So that's when this was made. Don't know the history of this gun, but I can tell you that I got what I consider to be a really good deal on it. You know, it's not a Smith & Wesson. Smith & Wessons are my favorites. However, you know, my mind can always be changed. Everybody makes some really darn good guns. I've got Rugers that I like. I've got, you know, you name it. So a little bit of a different deal here. You want to have your cylinder release. Instead of pushing forward, you pull back, and there you go. And I'm going to show you from the range footage just how well this ejector works. I've heard that the ejectors can seize up on these. Has not been the case. I did notice that both this screw and this screw worked themselves loose. I don't know how loose they were before I tightened them. If you hand tighten them all the way, though, it does tend to interfere with the working of the crane bringing down your cylinder. So I've got a few things I need to learn about that. Whether or not I want to use Loctite on them, or probably to start, I'm just going to keep my eye on them. But let's take a look at this firearm. I told you earlier I was happy with my deal. I got this on trade with a Remington 700 ADL that I picked up earlier this year. And you can see basically what those go for. I mean, you're talking about $350, $400, selling something like that used $300, and it was used. I used it. I did let go of a nice scope on top of it. So value-wise, I gave up basically $450 for this. And I've seen these things, depending on the condition, at various price ranges, upwards of $900 or $1,000 for the 357s, and north of that if you have the 22 Magnum version. Now, this would not be graded as a mint condition or 90%, I'm guessing. And some of you guys that know this stuff better than I do, I'm guessing this is probably about a 75%, 70%. I don't know in terms of the finish. Not super good. Mentioned, as tempting as it is to want to take something like this and make this perfect, you know what? I'm really not gonna. What I'm gonna do is keep this oiled so it doesn't rust, and I'm gonna shoot this because that's what I bought it for. And this is a wonderful shooter. We're gonna talk about that, and hope you enjoy watching it. Guys with information about this particular firearm, I'd love to hear it from you. Some will say that the guys that are into Colts that own or have owned both this and the Python. One of those guys being Hickok 45 will tell you they like the way this thing shoots better. It is known to be more durable than the Python. Obviously, this isn't a $2,000 or $3,000 firearm. It does not have the vented barrel, which I'm very happy about that, without a vented rib on this barrel. And quite frankly, this is the gun that's replacing that Dan Wesson Model 15-2 that got away from me. Based on performance, it shoots better than that Dan Wesson too. Dan Wesson was a better looking firearm, but this thing is one sweet shooting 357. Talk about no recoil compared to using that shorter 357. Let's see what kind of target results we got first time out with this gun. Not bad, first time out. Nice sight picture here. I like it. Wow. Now we're going to see how well she does at rapid fire. I think it would be fair to say that accuracy suffers a bit that way. There's my 10-yard, all double action. Very impressive. I have to say, I really like the sight picture on this. It's got a nice highlighted red sight up front. Very easy to acquire, and obviously this firearm is sighted in. For purposes of comparison, we also shot this new Smith & Wesson Model 60. This is also in 357 Magnum, and it features a 2 1/8 inch barrel. Here you can see my group. This is also shooting at 7 yards or 21 feet. Nice little group. It's obviously with the much shorter sight radius. Not going to be as accurate as a firearm. And one thing I also notice, obviously, the difference in weight, the difference in barrel length, and everything else. Your hand knows it after you've been shooting the M60 in that snub nose configuration. Whereas I could shoot that MK3 all day long and not have any issues with it. But as you can see, just phenomenal accuracy. I've also got to say I am a big fan of the way that this particular revolver ejects spent shells. I can't get any of my other revolvers to dispose of them that easily, especially when they're hot. Very impressed. Kind of what you see in an L frame from Smith & Wesson, which I just happen to have right here. And you're going to notice right off the bat that this 2018 Smith & Wesson 586 is in a heck of a lot better condition in terms of finish than this 1975 Colt. It's been used, but it's one hell of a shooter. But just comparing the two, the Smith L frame is without a doubt a fine 357 design. It is a stout gun. It's heavy. It's definitely a sidearm. It's nothing you would conceal. And this particular model from Colt, same thing. These are original grips. Everything on this is original. And as much as I am tempted to, you know, re-blue, repair job, patch blue job on the barrel here where you see some wear, or back here on the frame. As tempted as I am to do that, I'm not gonna. I just don't want to go messing with something like that. And the firearm shoots wonderfully. I'm hoping that this 586 will break in and shoot as well as this guy does, because this is one heck of a deal. One thing is, as I was mentioned, comparing this to the Smith & Wesson 586, and I think that's what it was meant to compete with, or vice versa. I actually think that these came out first, but with the Smith & Wesson, just comparing a new firearm in terms of lockup, proper way to do it is you release, and with the trigger back you let the hammer down, and that's going to let you know your position. You can see there's very little back and forth, just you can feel a tiny bit of movement, very little slop in this revolver at all. I don't know if you can see the flute there moving just a tiny bit, which is certainly acceptable. And each one's a little bit different, but you can see that. Now, if we compare that to this Colt, you're going to see a little bit more back and forth, not a lot. Obviously doesn't hurt the function at all. And a little bit more slop in the wheel. Not a ton though. For being a firearm that's, you know, 43 years old right now, pretty impressive. And I think this has seen a lot of rounds through it. So is the lockup as good as this new Smith? No, it's not. Is the finish as good as this new Smith? No, it's not. Does it shoot as good as this new Smith? No, it actually shoots better, because it's got a trigger that I believe is just simply a lot more broken in. I expect this one, after 1,000 rounds or so, is going to loosen up a little bit. And that's the one thing that guys need to understand about firearms. When you have tolerance that are just too tight, they tend to not be forgiving. So you need to have some kind of looseness or play and tolerances for just about every kind of firearm. Where you don't want to have them are things like when it does lock up, in terms of your forcing cone, is there too much space, things of that nature. And by all accounts, this firearm seems to be in real good shape as far as that goes. But yeah, I like this better than the Dan Wesson I let go, although I wish I still had that too, without a doubt. So we see the Colt Trooper weighing in at 2 pounds, 10.8 ounces. So how does that compare to the Smith? Let's see. 2 pounds, 10.5 ounces. So basically, these guns weigh the same, but they really don't. And I'll explain why. 2 more inches of barrel. So basically, this is a heavier gun, and I think that's mostly because of the full lug running underneath is basically the difference. If you look at the top, there's a top rib, unvented, and a lug on the bottom, which runs the full length. Here, we have a top rib, unvented, and the lug that just runs the length, basically just a little bit longer than the ejector rod. So these guns virtually are the same weight, although if you were to take the 6-inch version of this 586 for a true apples and apples comparison, you'd find out that it weighs more than the Colt. So kind of interesting there. Sleeping dog? Yeah, you don't care, do you? Probably not. I'm not one usually to save target pictures that much, but As I showed you at the range, this thing was just all about getting bullseyes, and it really didn't matter if we were talking about, you know, as you see in the lower right, this is out at 25 yards. Up here on the left, that's at 30 yards, and a couple at 25 as well, I believe. In the center is my very first shots, so just getting used to it, and that's at 21 feet or 7 yards. And again, let's see just how well we can group at 21 feet or 7 yards. So, brand new gun to me, which is actually 43 years old with a nice broke-in trigger and 357 Magnum shooting full loads. I'm impressed, without a doubt. Now, one thing that's also worth mentioning, here I am comparing a gun that hasn't been made for many years, that you can't get brand new anymore, to one that you can get brand new. And, you know, that might be a little bit frustrating for some of you that say, hey, where can I get me one of those Colt MK3s? Well, if you look on Gunbroker, if you look on Arms List, they're out there. They made a bunch of them. Do some shopping, do some looking around. You might get lucky like me and get one from somebody who wanted what I had a lot more than I did and was willing to make a heck of a deal to me. Whatever the case may be, you can find them. And I'll never stop liking that Smith 586. I'll tell you that much as well, guys. So to do a true comparison, I need to shoot that or the 686 in 6-inch barrel against this one to do a true comparison. But for me right now, it's just all about breaking in the trigger on a newer firearm. But as far as that Colt MK3 goes, sweet gun, and looking forward to shooting it as is for a long time. This is Dr. Drake 63 saying thanks for watching, and carry on, guys.